Today's conversation is on an important topic that was covered quite extensively in the book, The Kybalion, by 3 initiates. It's called neutralization. Neutralization. Neutralization is the key to release the conditions placed upon consciousness to experience reality. And what do I mean by this? I mean, reality is perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. Everything appears to be in harmony, in reality. People appear to be in harmony. Information appears to be in harmony. Environments appear to be in harmony. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. Now, that's reality. It is only the conditions placed upon consciousness that seem to suggest this way versus that way. This is better than that. Us versus them versus us. That kind of thinking arises from particular beliefs of limitation, conditions placed in mind upon consciousness that, when released through neutralization, result in the individual experiencing reality now, perfect as it is now. They acknowledge in the moment now that they are perfect as they are now. They have everything that they desire. They are everything that they desire to be. You have everything that you desire. You are all that you desire to be. You are perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You don't need confirmation bias to suggest if this condition is met, then love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And if that condition is met, then not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. We see clearly that's an illusion. That seems to, we could say, distort reality, being perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. Truth, consciousness, bliss. Existence-Consciousness, bliss. Sat-Chit-Ananda. Reality is perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. You appear to be in harmony with all. People, environment, information appears to be in synchronicity, in harmony. Now, let's say if the individual identifies with a particular belief, dichotomous belief, conditional belief in mind, as those beliefs are clearly limitations placed upon consciousness, which are not real, they're illusions, distorting reality, which is perfect as it is. They may witness what appears, and they discuss this in the book, as the principle of rhythm, the principle of polarity. And they seem to be, let's say, swayed. Let's say, for example, they come across some information, and the information suggests us versus them, this versus that. This is better than that. That is better than this. You must do this instead of that. You must do that instead of this. Through confirmation bias identification, they become polarized, let's say. The individual in mind becomes polarized. Now, the interesting thing is they transcend that illusion of being swayed as they exist perfectly now, as you exist perfectly now, beyond these limitations in mind. Yet, they seem to be, let's say, possessed by these particular beliefs in mind. And as a result, the body appears to move in a way that is swayed, let's say, by that particular belief in mind. Doing something, saying something that does not feel authentic and true as a result of that identification to that particular belief. The limitation has been placed upon consciousness and has been identified with. In that moment, the individual can acknowledge that that is clearly a confirmation bias. This way versus that way, us versus them versus us. Who suggests that one way is better than another? Who suggests that there is this versus that, us versus them? As reality is perfect as it is, beyond the identification to that confirmation bias, as reality is perfect beyond the identification to that confirmation bias, you transcend that limitation in mind, that condition placed upon consciousness. As you acknowledge through neutralization, we'll talk about how to do this, through neutralization, you automatically know what to do. You automatically know what to say. Body flows naturally. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. People appear to be in harmony with you. Environments appear to be in harmony with you. Everything appears to be in synchronicity. You realize that reality equals harmony. Also stated in Romans 12:2 in the Bible, do not conform to the patterns of this world. If the world appears to swing in this direction, that direction, us versus them, they are wrong, I am right, you versus this person, this versus all this unnecessary conflict. As you really think for yourself, you could choose to not identify with beliefs of limitation, release the conditions placed upon consciousness through neutralization, and the way reveals itself. And it may be at times this way, it may be at times that way, or it could be a variation in between, or we could say something totally different. I trust you've noticed this as you practice neutralization. So how do we do it? Well, consider this for a moment. While you are in a meditation, you are abiding in the silence. The silence is where you spring from. So we could say, during the meditation, I relax into the silence. At that point, I appear to be completely neutral. There's no this versus that thoughts in mind. There's no shaming or condemning the mind, the body, the thoughts while in meditation, while abiding in the silence. And what happens then is mind is calm. Neutralization. That happens during a meditation. To experience this, if you've been meditating it, I trust you know what I'm speaking about. And if you're new to meditation, or let's say you have experienced this before while in meditation and would like to experience this more so, I'll link in the description to a Vipassana guided meditation. I've been doing the Vipassana meditation for many years now, since 2008. That's my style of meditation. There's a guided one. I'll put a link in the description. Now, just as you are completely neutralized or very, let's say, neutralized during a meditation, you can also be and practice neutralization thus. You can allow yourself to be neutralized in day-to-day life experiences. I speak a lot about how you can access the flow while in meditation. You can access the flow while you go for a walk in the park. You can also access the flow while you are in what the person in mind labels as a chaotic conversation, a difficult conversation, a difficult environment, a chaotic environment. There is always a way to neutralize in the moment, to relax into the flow. And it is the same. We can access that silence the same way we do in meditation. By not identifying in that moment during, let's say, what the person in mind may call chaos, or let's say the person appearing to be swayed this way or that way. Again, this is referred to in relation to neutralization, is referred to in the two chapters, in relation to the two chapters in the book, the Kybalion, the principle of rhythm and the principle of polarity. So if, let's say, the individual feels like emotions, thoughts appear in mind that seem to suggest that they are about to be swayed in a direction, let's say, that does not feel authentic, in that moment, we can practice neutralization. Like we do in the meditation. Allow the emotions to be perfectly as they are. Not trying to force the release, not trying to shame or condemn the emotions. Allow them to be perfectly as they are. Allow the thoughts of limitation to appear and disappear in mind. And what you notice is body relaxing into the flow, emotions regulating into the flow, mind appearing to be calmer, we could say. Those thoughts that seem to suggest this way versus that way, us versus them, dissolve. Neutralization. Every time the individual takes that opportunity to practice that, the mind is purified from those dichotomous beliefs that suggest this way versus that way, us versus them. And as a result, nothing a person says, does, information, whatever, what a person says in the information, etc., can sway you. You remain as you are, perfectly as you are. Practically speaking, if the individual identifies with a dichotomous belief, through that confirmation bias, they get swayed in a direction and end up doing things, let's say, that they don't genuinely desire to do. They engage, perhaps, in unnecessary conflict. They, you could say, forget their true nature in that moment because they appear to be possessed by that belief. They forget their true nature is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. They may forget in the moment that they already have what they desire, that they already are all that they desire to be, that existence is bliss, Sat-Chit-Ananda, Existence-Consciousness-Bliss, Truth-Consciousness-Bliss. They may forget that, let's say, in the moment. They may forget that they transcend that limitation, that condition in mind. And as they are not the mind, as they are not the belief, as they transcend the mind, as they transcend the belief of limitation, the condition placed upon consciousness, as they are pure consciousness, they acknowledge that they are pure consciousness, the condition is released. The condition placed upon consciousness, which results in, let's say, the individual doing things that they don't genuinely desire to do, saying things that they don't genuinely desire to say. That condition is released, and they can be as they are, perfectly as they are. Reality is experienced perfectly as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. And practically speaking, it is experienced as, more so, reality being in harmony with you. You are in harmony with all. People, environment, circumstance, information appears to be in harmony with you in increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive. In relationships, this results in the individual remaining as they are. And it doesn't matter what the other person says, does not say, does not do. They don't, let's say, appear to be swayed this way or that way. They remain neutral in the moment. And from there, they respond authentically. They do the right thing, we could say. Or they might not do anything. Because who says you must do this and you must not do that? You must not do this, you must not do that. You have to do this, you have to do that. The answer is it depends. Consider, within the silence is infinite intelligence. I trust you notice this, is during a meditation, clarity arises. After a meditation, as you were abiding in the silence, as you were neutralized, clarity arose in mind, intuition. Spontaneously, you do the things that you genuinely desire to do. You allow yourself to be. Well, the same is in these moments where the individual, the person in mind specifically, the person in mind, you, the individual, transcend the false identity construct in mind. In that moment, you can shift your identity by releasing identification to the false identity construct that suggests this way versus that way, us versus them. It's a false identity construct. Reality is perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. People appear to be in harmony with you. You appear to be in harmony with people. Everyone appears to be in synchronicity. As the individual does nothing, as we discussed in Tuesday's video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link in the description to it. As the individual does nothing in the moment, neutralization. Allow those thoughts to appear and disappear in mind that suggest limitation, that suggests it needs to be this way versus that way, this versus that, us versus them. Those thoughts don't belong to you. They belong to what the Bible refers to as the old man. And you are not the old man. You are the real self, the true self beyond limitation. As you release those conditions placed upon consciousness in mind, pure consciousness is experienced more so as harmonious relationships. So we take the opportunity, if it presents itself, to remove those limitations in mind by doing nothing. Shifting our identity, we could say, from the false identity construct to true identity. You, the way you are now, perfect as you are now. That is who you are. I don't imagine you to be the former self, the old man. That is an illusion. That would suggest that I was identified with a particular belief that we could say projects onto you, casts onto you a limitation, suggesting that you are not perfect as you are now, that you are not perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment now. There's nothing wrong with you. You are perfect as you are now. So if I suggest that there's something wrong with you, I cast a limitation upon you, and I have no authentic desire to do that, as that is not reality. Reality is perfect as you are now. You are perfect as you are now. Another way of saying this is, I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. You're not worse than me. I'm not worse. We exist now, we could say, perfectly neutral as I am, in harmony with all. Thus, you are in harmony with me. I appear to be in harmony with you, as in the reality of God is perfect and pleasing as it is now, as stated in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world. So through neutralization, which is allowing things to be, allowing yourself to be, not trying to control, force, or manipulate, acknowledging rather that there's no need to control, force, or manipulate. What need is there to control, force, or manipulate when reality is perfect as it is now? I simply release the conditions placed upon consciousness, which we could say in relation to needing to force, manipulate, or control, which is a result of identification to a particular belief of limitation, a condition placed upon consciousness. The individual may then react to particular information or what a person says or what a person does, and then project the energy in motion in a way that generates conflict. The energy in motion, which is emotions, like the burning desire, as articulated in Think and Grow Rich, can be transmuted to a creative expression that is in harmony with all. The energy is not suppressed, repressed, or denied, or pretended like it's not existing. Rather, it's transmuted into creative expression. Certainly you can do that. And through neutralization, you're able to channel that energy in motion, channel the creative thoughts. Body also is channeled towards harmonious relationships. Creative expression, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, it manifests as coming up with, let's say, or allowing from the silence to emerge, more specifically, creative innovation in conversations that you have with your prospect. The conversation flows because you're not saying that they're wrong or there's a problem with them. Rather, people appear to be in harmony. So there's a conversation happening. The conversation, I have a product or service that can benefit you. And I will listen to what you say. I will understand you. I will not identify with the confirmation bias, saying that there's something wrong with you, me versus you, this versus that. And clarity arises as a flow-based conversation that facilitates and bridges, we could say, what they're looking for with what you have, for wonderful compensation exchange. Now, at times, and I've done consultative selling for many years, I may not physically have created that product or service yet. Through the conversation that we have, clarity arises through neutralization. Clarity arises all of a sudden. I can create another product or service, or we could say it emerges. That product or service is emerging from the silence during the conversation through neutralization. I appear to be in harmony with them. They appear to be in harmony with me. Everything is perfect as it is now in reality. That is reality. Reality equals harmony. So what happens then is I may come up with a creative new product. This has happened to me a number of times in my consulting practice, when I had my IT business. I all of a sudden came up with a creative solution in the moment while we were relating harmoniously together. A creative idea, product or service emerged. I made the offer. They took me up on the offer. Compensation was exchanged. Mutual harmony. Another way of saying this, I say this a number of times, the student and teacher are one. Well, the service provider and the individual that receives the service is one with the service provider. Or another way of saying it is giving and receiving is one. It flows naturally as we release dichotomous beliefs, conditions placed upon consciousness, saying this versus that, this way versus that way. Allow things to be perfectly as they are. Why would I need to try to force myself to come up with creative solutions when in the silence, which I access through neutralization, I, you could say, give birth in my imagination to the creative idea, to the solution, to whatever seeming challenge or problem. And as mentioned, this can also be done in what the person may label as difficult conversation, because who labels it as a difficult conversation? No shame, no condemnation. That can result, that particular belief, if identified with, can result in being swayed, let's say, which is an illusion, as you transcend the person in mind that appears to be swayed by that belief identification. You are perfect as you are now, whole, complete, need nothing, have everything, perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You remain as you are. Through neutralization, you relax. I relax into the being I am, from which everything appears to be in harmony. And so what ends up happening then is you come up with a creative solution. You know what to say. They may come up with it on their own as well, because all is in harmony. And let's say if the person in mind was identified with a particular belief, a dichotomous belief, a this versus that belief, a confirmation bias, they may experience then through the lens of the confirmation bias. Something like this. The person says this, and now they're reactive to that particular belief. No shame, no condemnation. And they may think now they're not good enough. They're not love, they're not happiness, they're not peace, they're not bliss, not fulfillment. Opportunity point in that moment. No shame, no condemnation. If that kind of thinking appears in mind, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the old man, and you are not the old man. If you really think for yourself. In other words, you think from the premise of fulfillment, from being love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That is you really thinking. Any other thoughts that suggest otherwise appear to disappear. So as we don't identify with those thoughts, neutralization. Emotions are regulated. And what if the emotions arise? That's okay. No need to label yourself as doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. No need to label yourself as you have a problem. You don't have a problem. And what do I mean by this? Again, you are perfect as you are now. Reality is perfect as it is now. You are perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You, existence, consciousness-bliss, truth, consciousness, bliss, transcend beliefs of limitation. So how could you be a thought of limitation, a belief of limitation, suggesting you're not good enough? There's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Any thoughts or illusions that appear to suggest, let's say, that there's something wrong with you, don't identify with them. They appear to disappear. And reality is experienced as harmonious relationships, supportive relationships, loving relationships, happiness-based, peace-based, fulfillment-based, love-based, bliss-based, existence, consciousness, bliss. So then the individual actually experiences it in the moment with the individual. If the emotions arise, they subside. Just like the thoughts appear to disappear, the emotions arise and subside. Arise and subside. They flow through neutralization. By not saying that this particular emotion means bad person, doing something wrong. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the other person. And through the confirmation bias, the person in mind may think, now I need to force, convince, strong-arm, project anger at this person. Neutralization. Emotions are released and may be transmuted, as mentioned. That's another wonderful word that I learned from Think and Grow Rich, but then when I came across the Kybalion, I further expanded upon it. Transmutation. The emotions are transmuted into a creative expression, into a product, a service, a way of communicating. This is how I have a consistent energy flow all throughout the day, because I don't stifle the emotions. I allow them to flow through my creative expression, the videos, the conversations, the products, the services, every aspect of the entrepreneurial journey, actually. The innovation, the sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the leadership. Flow. As being neutralized, you allow the energy in motion to flow, the creativity to flow. Mind is purified. The individual also experiences the mind purification benefits. As I always say, we take the opportunities to purify the mind. And one of the ways to purify the mind, just as you do in meditation, is during the day-to-day life experiences, whether it be in relationships, in business, whatever. Abide as you are. Neutralization. So just as you can abide in the silence and acknowledge the great teacher of silence, you can abide in the silence by relaxing into the flow during experiences that the individual may label as chaos or confusion or uncertainty or challenge or difficult, it's an opportunity to practice neutralization. As we discussed recently, this also reconciled the dichotomous belief suggesting order is better than chaos. Chaos is better than order. One is not better than another. Reality is in harmony. Thus, chaos is in harmony with order. Order is in harmony with chaos. Another way of saying it, as I discussed in that video, I'll link in the description to it. I bring order to chaos. I bring chaos to order. At times, it may appear chaotic, as it does, for example, with an entrepreneur. Nothing wrong with that. There's order in that chaos. And at the times we do things in an orderly way, something chaotic might happen. Nothing wrong with that. Opportunity point to practice neutralization, relax into the flow, and order is revealed. We can say that chaos brings forth a higher degree of order. Practical example would be, I worked in corporate IT for 10 years. I had my own IT business from 2009 to 13, which I built to success. We discovered what we would call the vulnerability of the system and came up with patches or solutions. And the systems would get more refined. And then people would come up to us and they would say, we would like to integrate your very refined system. And if you ask them why, one of the reasons, let's say, is they would say, well, you have patched these potential vulnerabilities. We would like to have a secure system. This has been the case for technology companies all throughout the years. They had put in systems in place and vulnerabilities were discovered, either through some kind of hacking or maybe their developers found these, let's say, areas that can be patched. Nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong with it. The system all of a sudden was infiltrated, let's say, with chaos for the opportunity to patch the system and bring order to that particular part. And this may continue. Maybe the system may be quite refined and maybe chaos may appear a different way in entrepreneurship. It could appear in innovation, in sales, in marketing, in operations, somehow in leadership, and that's okay. Is chaos better than order? Is order better than chaos? Release that dichotomous belief of one way being better than another, this way versus that way. I don't see it as chaos versus order, or order versus chaos, or chaos is better than order better than chaos. Everything is perfect as it is now. Reality is perfect as it is now. Reality equals harmony. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, Romans 12:2, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this is practically done by taking the opportunities to apply neutralization. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further acknowledge reality. We can say reality is perfect as it is now. Every moment is an opportunity to abide as I am, perfectly as I am, to experience reality, being in harmony with me. People, information, synchronistically appears to be in harmony with me. All is in harmony with me together. This and that. Chaos and order. This person and that person. My way of thinking and their way of thinking. There is always a harmony point, a reconciliation in reality now.